Right, welcome to today's explainer. We are stepping into a landscape that honestly feels like it's been ripped straight from a grim, dark graphic novel. Today, we're exploring a deeply Nietzschean fable called The Salvage of the Sovereign Mind. And to really unpack the heavy philosophy and philology embedded in this text, I'm going to guide you through this explainer by taking on a specific persona. I'll be speaking as the Shadow, the dark, cynical, inevitable companion trailing our so-called sovereign wanderer. Picture it, a bone-white desert, a landscape entirely stripped of old gods and comforts. Our wanderer thinks he's found ultimate freedom, but as the Shadow, I see the terrifying reality of his delusion. So let's step right into the absolute void.
Okay, let's dive into this delusion. As his shadow, I literally hiss this at the wanderer while my own form starts to thin into a razor's edge under the blinding sun. The wanderer genuinely believes he's conquered the light. He thinks that by tearing down all the old structures of morality and religion, he's liberated himself. But I see the truth. He hasn't found freedom. He's just stepped into a luminous, starving void. It's an absolute emptiness. He's traded a prison with walls for a desert with zero horizon, completely mistaking the absence of boundaries for true power.
That brings us to Encounter 1, the ash-strewn hearth, which perfectly sets the bleak scene of our wanderer's grand delusion. The vertical sun here is absolute. I mean, there is literally nowhere to hide. It bleaches the memory of the gilded cherubim, the old, decorated religious ideals of the past. The maps of the fathers, those moral compasses of previous generations, have actually burned ash and turned into this colorless, biting salt. And what does the wanderer do? He drops to his knees. He doesn't seek new gods. No, he desperately scavenges through the cooling embers of these ancient lies, just sifting through the ash to see if even a tiny spark of vitality remains to keep him warm. So, what does this all mean? It brings us to a foundational tragedy called intellectual salvage. This is the absolute tragedy of creating meaning without a foundation. Our wanderer has successfully destroyed the frame, the old world, the old morals, but he is completely bankrupt when it comes to building a new horizon. He is an unowned mind just wandering the wreckage. This isn't creation at all. It's a desperate salvage operation in a completely meaningless universe. And this brilliantly illustrates the core disconnect at the heart of the fable. On one side, you have the wanderer's delusion. He looks around this empty wasteland and somehow convinces himself he's hearing the voice of a new, sovereign law, his own law. But on the other side, as the shadow looking at the stark reality, I just see a man wandering blindly through the ash. He is entirely mistaking the terrifying silence of this philosophical furnace for a voice of authority. He's claiming sovereignty over a kingdom of dust. Moving on to Encounter 2, the etymological blade. This is where the wanderer's desperation turns linguistic. I watch him kneel in that bone-white dust, and honestly, what he does next is gruesome. He takes a jagged quill and attempts to peel back the layers of moral paint from language itself. He carves into the bedrock of human speech, taking a profound concept like the word good, and he just hacks at it like a surgeon cutting into bone, until the term lies in bloody, unrecognizable pieces before him. He actually thinks he's performing necessary surgery on the human soul, but really, he is just violently ripping apart the rusty hinges of a door that once led to a sanctuary. So what exactly is he left with? Etymological scrap. As the shadow, I just have to let out a rasping, cynical laugh. I ask him, is this your mastery? To turn the bedrock of human speech into a pile of historical accidents? Because by deconstructing language so violently, he hasn't freed the words. He's murdered them. To own a vocabulary in the state is simply to possess a graveyard of terms. These words no longer hold any power. They command zero obedience from the human spirit. They're just dead things. He acts like an art restorer, totally convinced that if he just scrapes away enough of the old moral paint, he'll find the pure, original masterpiece beneath. But the reality, beneath all that paint, there is nothing but a blank, weeping canvas that has completely forgotten its original name. He is cut so deep that there is literally no meaning left to salvage, leaving the spirit to shiver in the cold, harsh reality of an unnameable world. Okay, here is Encounter 3, the White Scream, focusing on the tragedy of the unowned future. Think about this line for a second. A peak without a myth is merely a jagged tooth of indifferent stone. I whisper this to him as the great noon approaches. It's such a chilling thought. The vellum he carries to write his new laws on isn't a symbol of potential, it is a white scream. It's a blank slate that demands a colossal weight of meaning, a weight his solitary, isolated hand can never truly provide. He wants to stand at the summit of a new world, but without a myth, without a shared foundation, that mountain peak is nothing but indifferent dead rock. So the crucial point here is the contrast. The Wanderer claims he's writing grand new concepts of becoming and mastery. He genuinely thinks he is forging an Ubermensch-like state of being. But look at his ink. His ink is merely the sweat of his own profound isolation and the biting salt of a desert that could not care less about his new names. His attempt at mastery is just a desperate salvage operation for purpose in a universe that remains terminally, permanently silent. Let's trace how this builds and how his isolation deepens towards the climax. In the morning, he so confidently discarded the maps of the Fathers, believing he didn't need them. Well, by midday, the realization of the absolute void sets in. He possesses absolutely nothing but the emptiness of a refugee's hunger in a barren wasteland. And now we approach the great noon, the moment of ultimate exposure, where the vertical light is about to strike. The isolation just gets heavier with every passing hour. And that brings us to Encounter 4, the shadowless zenith, the climax of the fable. At the exact stroke of the great noon, the sun is directly overhead. The vertical light strikes the center of his skull. And in this blinding, terrible clarity, the very last dark shelter he had, me, his shadow, is entirely erased. His weary pride has nowhere left to hide. The absolute void has consumed even the shadows. As my shadowy form dissolves into the shimmering heat of the desert, I cry out this final parting curse to him. Farewell, Master of the Void, for you have finally purchased an intellect with no world left to govern. It just perfectly encapsulates his tragedy. He's achieved his ultimate sovereign intellect. He has destroyed all the old illusions, but the cost was the world itself. He's a king sitting on a throne of nothingness. In response to this utter isolation, he roars his Amor Fati at the zenith of the sky, the love of fate. But in the context of this explainer, we see this not as a victorious triumph of the will, not at all. Instead, it's the ultimate desperate salvage mechanism. It is the final coping strategy of a spirit that has absolutely nothing left to lose. He loves his fate because, well, his fate is literally the only thing he has left in the absolute void. Which leads us into our final section, the tragedy of sovereign minds. We really need to analyze the aftermath of this so-called liberation. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark reality of his situation. He stands entirely alone amidst the wreckage of ancient superstitions. He calls himself a pioneer of the future, but because he has destroyed all shared meaning, that future is utterly unknowable. And most tragically of all, he claims he has brought about a new dawn for humanity, but what he's feeling is actually the first cold breath of a shadowless winter. His sovereign mind is trapped in a freezing, isolated reality. Without a foundation, without a shared myth, everything he tries to build is just dead on arrival. Any values he attempts to write on that blank vellum are reduced to nothing more than broken ornaments hanging on the neck of a dead god. Sure, they might look shiny for a fleeting moment, but they have no life, no power, and absolutely no anchor in reality. This explainer leaves us staring right into the same luminous, starving void as the Wanderer. We all strive for independence, right? For a sovereign mind completely free from the dogmas of the past. But I have to ask you, and I really want you to chew on this before you go, when you deconstruct your own world to find ultimate freedom, are you actually building a new horizon? Or are you too merely salvaging broken ornaments on the neck of a dead god?